Please take your seats quickly, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim and Chris. On today's Wimbledon Round 1 catch-up, sponsored by DownloadTennis.com.
Coco Gauff crashes out to Sofia Kenin.
Venus Williams succumbs to Svitolina.
And Andy Murray wins a Battle of the Brits.
Chris, today is the 4th of July and we are here to catch up on round 1 of Wimbledon. Well, I say round 1, it's been a bit of a wet start, hasn't it, at the Championships? It's been a bit soggy. We have not actually been able to complete all the matches in round 1. We're gonna do our best. We've got our collector set player pick predictions as well to reveal.
Do we have to reveal them, Joel? Do we have to?
I know. I mean, predictions are not your strongest suit at the moment, are they?
No, and thank you to our listeners for pointing out just how badly I did.
Yes,
by
massive thank
predicting
you.
that Coco Gauff.
Massive thank you.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Joel loves it. I'm not sure I do, but Coco Gauff did crash out. She was my pick for the women's title, and I would like to issue a formal apology to all of our listeners that I will try and do better, but I do pick with my heart, not my head, when it comes to the predictions, and collector set is where I will regain my credibility, Joel.
Well, listeners, don't worry. I am fully going to make Chris aware of this prediction, not just on this episode, but I just feel like hopefully every opportunity I get going forward. I do, Chris, feel like this has kind of taken you down from that platform above me and Kim for par for the courts, where I feel that you just beat us every time. But actually, I feel like this time your predictions so far they have brought you crashing back down to earth.
I have been humbled. I feel like the playing field is now. It's not even level, Joel. I think I'm below ground level.
I mean,
at this
that's
point,
saying something, given some of the shocking predictions I have made in the past.
Yes, Taylor Fritz, was it US Open champion? That was first round exit. Just to remind our listeners that Kim is the only person with any credibility, really, when it comes to this.
Exactly. And Kim has been at Wimbledon already. She was in the raid. She was in the raid today on Henman Hill.
Twice.
Yeah, she's been there twice. She was on Henman Hill today, watching Andy Murray. We're going to be hearing from her in a short while, actually, because she has voice noted in on her mobile about her Q experience. And Chris, that is where we're going to start, because although there's not as many tennis matches as we would like to talk about, there are certainly other things we need to talk about. And before we get into talking about the tennis, we've got to start with the Wimbledon Q. We're tennis fans. We live the tennis fan experience, and the Wimbledon Q is quintessential to the championships, but it's got off to a very rocky start, hasn't it, this year?
Yeah, and it's made a lot of headlines for the wrong reasons. I think people who do queue and have queued will know it's a well-oiled machine. It runs like clockwork. It's so well organised. The whole way that you get your pass in the queue, it's all done so that there's no queue jumping and you all get in as quickly as possible. And it does seem that this time people have been queuing from a very early time and they've not been able to get in to watch the matches, and the matches have been well underway, which is, I mean, it's stopping fans from getting to watch tennis, which they've spent ages queuing for to show their dedication. So it's completely the wrong way that this is working, that they aren't able to get in there to watch the matches that they queued up overnight sometimes to see.
Yes, it's not been the greatest of start. And I think that's what is so surprising, is the fact that it has been a well-oiled machine, I feel, up until this point. I think last year the queue maybe had a year off because the numbers were a little bit down, but certainly that demand has gone up, and I don't know if that has been one of the reasons that have just not coped. I've been reading about the worry around protesters getting in. We've seen environmental groups at other sporting events, and I don't know if there's a nervousness around that, and as a result the security has been a lot stricter in terms of those bag checks, and it's just made the experience slower. But it does sound like on day one, we got into a situation where people were turning up in the morning. They're not getting in until after 4 p.m. I mean, Wimbledon tweeted at 1 p.m. that their ground capacity had been reached, and basically told people not to come to the queue. But yeah, it feels very, very different to like what we've seen with it before.
Yeah, I mean, I've queued many times. I've never had an issue at all.
No.
And I definitely think that going into, I'm going to be camping tomorrow, trying to follow in Kim's footsteps.
Are you more nervous now?
Yes, because I have no idea what time to get there and if I'll even get in. I mean, I want to see Andy Murray play, and I'm going to go the day before to hopefully maybe get a chance to do that. And now I'm thinking this would be, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm the most natural camper. So if I'm going to camp and I'm not going to get until 4 p.m, I think there'll be a very stern letter of sternly worded email, probably slightly passive aggressive from me to someone at Wimbledon, but maybe anonymous, well, so that we're still able to let in next year.
Well, I've just been on holiday at a music festival, so I feel like I'm like the king of camping at the moment. So maybe after our recording, I'll give you a few tips. But yes, let's hear though from Kim, because she actually likes to tell us how much of a fan of the queue she is. She describes herself actually as a veteran of the queue, and she was in the queue on day one, and this is what she had to say about it.
Personally, my queue experience was fine, but I know for many, they had a terrible experience in the queue on day one. Security causing long delays, not enough staff, not enough security stations, really significantly slower for people in the queue. You know, people getting there at the usual kind of times that you'd get there in the morning. You'd expect to be in 4 or 5 hours around lunchtime. Many people waiting 8-9 hours to get in, which is just absurd. It's not good enough, and it's shameful, really. And I think Wimbledon needs to take a long, hard look at the logistics and make some immediate improvements. And I'm not sure if that's possible for this year's championships, but they certainly can't let this happen again, because the fan experience for those queuing for grounds passes is really important. You know, there's thousands of fans, and they are the lifeblood of the Wimbledon kind of fan community, and they shouldn't be let down in that way. It's certainly making me rethink whether I want to join the queue for grounds passes this week. I don't want to be waiting around for 9 hours. So I'm really curious and intrigued to see what Wimbledon can do to alleviate the kind of bottlenecks and delays at security. They seem to have taken, personally, I think they've taken some backward steps in how they sort of do the security logistics within the queue itself. And as someone who's queued for many, many years, I'm a bit of a veteran of the queue. I've seen in the last 2 years a noticeable, reduction in the experience for fans queuing with the replacement of the queue security tent and the way they now do the ticketing and security for queuers. So it's not been a great experience on day one for most people in the queue. Many missing the start of play, many missing matches on show courts that they've camped for because of the delay. So I hope that something can be done ASAP to help resolve that.
I still just can't get over, Chris, this sort of low-key flex of veteran of the queue. That honestly is not something I would be boasting about. I'm not going to lie. I just cannot get into the queue as much as Kim. I honestly think it should be abolished, to be quite honest with you.
I didn't know that Kim was actually the first person to ever queue for Wimbledon. That was something that I wasn't aware of until very recently. But no, I like the queue because I think the ballot doesn't always let those people who are the most hardcore and most dedicated get in. And I think having those tickets reserved for some of the best tickets in tennis for people who want to see Rafa, for example, like Kim always has done, I love it. Getting the people who love it the most into stadiums is what you should do. Like, I mean, how else will the Carota boys get in to see Yannick Sinner, Joel?
Oh, Yannick Sinner's agent is just giving them some freebies to get them in for some fan support.
I think might be sponsoring them.
No, I'm the complete opposite. I think they should just get rid of it. Yes, it's a tradition, but I just think some traditions can stop. They don't need to last forever. And with the advent of...
A bit like the Wimbledon queue does last forever, it would seem.
I know. With the advent of digital ticketing, we're seeing more of those restocks online. I just think they should just fully embrace that a lot more. Get rid of the queue and just put the tickets online. I just think it would mean so much easier, so much simpler. And I just think it would take what is turning into a nuisance and a source of criticism for the tournament, just take it away. If you take the queue away, I think you just take a whole world of problems away.
I mean, it does work very well at the French Open, at other slams I've been to. That is very, very simple. But we'll put it on our socials. Do you like the queue? Should the queue be kept? So we'll put that poll up and we'll see what you say and we'll report back on our next episode.
I'm going to be clicking no like 1,000 times, one after the other, because I feel very adamant about it. I think that's one of the things. It's such a...
Have you ever queued though, Joel?
I haven't. I know. Does that ruin it?
Go.
Well, that ruins it, doesn't it? But I genuinely, I just can't get involved in it. But it definitely is a very polarizing topic, I think, for fans. Some fans like Kim, very passionate about it. I'm very passionate about it, but in a completely negative sense.
After I've camped, I don't think I'll be passionate about it, Joel. I'm passionate about it before I do it.
Well, I'm curious to see how your experience is, and maybe we can get a comparison with what Kim's was like. But I'm certain one player or one person who didn't camp today was Roger Federer. Mr. Federer returned to the hallowed turf of Wimbledon, and he was there in centre court. There was a bit of a ceremony for him. I was kind of wondering, what was this ceremony going to be? Was he going to walk out onto the court itself and he was going to get a nice kind of 15-minute like hello to the and wave to the fans? But no, it was a lot more kind of sedate and business as usual, wasn't it? He just sort of went into the royal box. There was a little announcement, a little wave. Fans loved it, and sat next to Kate Middleton.
I mean, I think they seem to be best of friends. I think they were having a hit in the week. We all thought, that forehand from Kate Middleton looked pretty good. Maybe she should have a go on the women's tour. She might make it past the first round.
She must be getting tips. Any sort of these occasions when there's like initiatives or sitting next to Mr. Federer in a box.
What can't she do? You have to be in constant training. So maybe she'll get called up to the Billie Jean King Cup team, Joel. I think maybe Anne Kjovathong might ask if he's available for selection. But it's not a bad ticket, is it, being sat next to Roger Federer on centre court? And I think it was great to kind of hear just how obviously popular he is, and he wasn't able to have that farewell at Wimbledon. So I think for a lot of people, it's always a welcome sight seeing Roger Federer on the courts of SW19.
And what do you think was going through his mind just coming back into that court? There's so many memories there, so many achievements, so many records made. What do you think was going through his mind?
I just think that he looks so happy in retirement, and I think that's something that you really hope with these players when they do retire, that they don't feel like they had unfinished business. And I think maybe there was that one Wimbledon final against Novak Djokovic where he had those championship points where he said that took a long time to get over, but I think his achievements are unbelievable, and I think it hopefully will be more like a homecoming as he kind of continues to hopefully play a role in tennis. We did think maybe he'd be a pundit. We did think we'd see him at Wimbledon, and hopefully over time he will stay close to the game.
Yeah, I think he said he felt it was still a little bit too uncomfortable, him kind of talking about the current generation, and that was one of the reasons he didn't want to do commentary this year. But I do hope it happens in the future. I was just going to say, Chris, I feel like he is happy because did you see he got to perform with Coldplay the other day? He got to go on stage with them and perform with them. So I feel like for some people, I feel like that will give them a smile.
I mean, my father's recently retired and he hasn't been on stage with Coldplay, so I think maybe that's just a Roger Federer sort of moment. But I think he's definitely keeping active. We saw him obviously in the Swiss tourism video with Trevor Noah, so maybe he's doing more than he was before. People always say they find out when they retire, right?
He's branching out.
He is.
But I feel like the awkward question in the room is that I think the official reasoning for this kind of celebration and this ceremony was to kind of recognise his unmatched 8 gentlemen's Grand Slam singles titles at Wimbledon. I mean, Novak Djokovic could equal that record within the fortnight. So it'll be interesting to see, will he get kind of treated in the same way as Roger Federer?
I mean, not whilst he's still playing. I think this is something that you reserve for players once they've kind of hung up their racket. But, I mean, it is always interesting. I think we've seen this before when you see players who had a record who are actually there to watch their record, whether it's be equalled or, superseded. I think it is just one where what we've talked about before, what Roger did at the time was far in advance of what other players had done, and then generations come and players come and those records are broken. But right now, the record is his, so I think he should enjoy it for this fortnight.
He can enjoy it.
Because I'm not sure how much longer
exactly.
it will be around
He
for.
can enjoy it. I mean, looking at some of the action on that centre court, we had Carlos Alcaraz defeating Jeremy Chardy. Alcaraz came through in 3 sets, 6-love, 6-2, 7-5. What were your impressions of this match? Was this felt routine, but again, at that third set, did Alcaraz sort of drop the ball a little bit?
I think he did. I also think to be particularly sort of critical, Jeremy Chardy played appallingly in the first couple of sets. I mean, the number of double faults he hit, I don't think he's at match level or match practice level that he needs to be at. I think this very much is like one of those farewells where you get to play on like court number one for this one and play against the number one seed, and that's something that is very nice for him. But I also do just think this is the biggest tournament, the biggest prize in tennis, and that first set was not competitive. So I think it was probably that there was a rise in level from Chardy from what I saw, but there also was a bit of a mental wobble from Alcaraz because he didn't really have to switch in that much in those first couple of sets. But I mean, he got it done, and I think that's what matters, right? I think the 22-minute first set was particularly uneventful, and for him, I guess the next time when he's serving it, when trying to serve it out or kind of finish that off in the third set, it's important that he gets it done because you don't want to be playing 4 sets against Jeremy Chardy in his farewell match. That shouldn't be happening.
No, definitely not. And it does. I think it's interesting. It does raise that kind of question. I think we've spoken about it before in terms of wild cards, protected rankings, players who are on the out and just want that last big moment, and whether it feels right if we're going to get kind of these comical matchups where, I think Jeremy Chardy was like you're saying, I trained for 6 weeks just for this moment, to be able to compete on the grass. So it is a bit kind of like, yeah, that's great, but that's not really what I feel like wildcards and protected rankings are about. And I know we get those really nice stories, like for example, Feliciano Lopez in Mallorca the other week. But at the same time, it does sort of rob, I guess, players who, this is them week in, week out. Chardy, yes, you've had your time, now time to move on, so other players can take these spots and probably give a more competitive showing. Yeah,
and I think it definitely isn't necessarily the best ticket for someone who is going to watch this as well, because there are so many players just outside the top 100. Like qualifying for Wimbledon is so difficult, and I think when it comes to some of the British wildcards, and obviously we'll talk about Andy Murray a little bit later, but players who are ranked outside the top 250, they get a wild card. I think there is pressure on them to perform. And Chardy's actually only won, I believe, 1 match this season in singles.
Not great.
It's not great. And so I do think that it is kind of a manipulation of the system to be able to play. And I think that not all careers have to be celebrated, on a show court at Wimbledon, because that wasn't how Roger Federer went out either. He could have played one more time. He could have done that. He would have been very welcome to do that. And Jeremy Chardy's not a Roger Federer. So I do think that it was playing the system a little bit, and it didn't lead to the best spectacle.
They also, I don't think, should go out on court 6 without any sort of standing or any sort of fan space, really. He's looking at Annette Kontaveit. Hopefully, maybe it's not her farewell match, because, that's on the complete other end of the spectrum and not really great to see, if I'm being perfectly honest. Not befitting, I think, of a former world number 2.
No, we were talking about this and we were hoping it would be sort of a court 1 match for her. Because I do think that is a career that's being kind of cut short, and we've talked that it would be nice that she would be able to have a nice farewell, because the circumstances of her not being able to play tennis ongoing because of the physical ailments. But she's been winning matches on the tour. She's still at a level where she can be playing there. And so I do think that it is an odd one when it comes to some of these sort of farewell moments, because for Jeremy Chardy, I'm not sure it was worth the 6 weeks for this moment. But I hope he had his day. He had his day.
He can go back to the day job. I believe he coaches Hugo Humbert, so we're not actually going to see him like completely off the tennis court at a Coldplay gig. But at least he got his moment. He got his farewell, and now we can move on. Talking about the Brits, you mentioned Andy Murray. He is through. He beat fellow Brit Ryan Peniston 6-3, 6-love, 6-1. We also had Cam Norrie go through, but Dan Evans is out. He lost to Quentin Hallis in 4 sets. Let's start very quickly with Andy Murray. How much can you take from that victory against Ryan Peniston?
Oh, it's tricky, isn't it? I think we've been debating this on the podcast for a while, in terms of it's very hard to know where Murray's level is at, because we did talk about that sort of fantastic challenger runner form that he had, and then obviously he was made to look like he wasn't necessarily at his peak when he played against de Minaur at Queen's, where he was kind of dispatched quite easily. So this match is very hard to read into it because Ryan Pennison is obviously ranked outside the world's top 250 and is not someone who plays week in, week out on the tour. And playing against Murray under the roof, I do think that's almost as home court as Murray can get on centre court. And it's a very tough prospect for a player who is as inexperienced. So I think the real test will come in round 2 when we see whether he plays Stefanos Tsitsipas or Dominic Thiem. But the positives from his side was that he wasn't broken that whole match. He did serve pretty well. And I think getting off to a good start at Wimbledon, irrespective of who you're playing, I think you couldn't have asked for a better start.
He got the nod as well, didn't he, from Roger Federer at the end, who was watching on. I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna give a little bit more credit, I think, to Andy Murray in terms of his performance, because Ryan Pennison, yes, he is outside the top 200, and yes, Andy Murray should be beating him comfortably in straight sets, but he's had some handy grass court victories in his career. He's beaten Casper Ruud, Holger Rune, Jack Draper, Manarino, who's no slouch on a grass court. So I do think there's got to be some credit there, but as you said, it's just very hard to know, where his level is at. You mentioned Thiem or Tsitsipas. There's going to be a big bonus there in terms of he's got his match done and dusted. Thiem and Tsitsipas are kind of locked in a second set, which is going to be seen out tomorrow. Who would you like to see Murray play against? Because I think you could make arguments for both players, given the form, particularly I think Stefanos Tsitsipas has showed on grass over the last few weeks.
I might put that question straight back to you because Kim and I were debating whether this was the perfect draw for Andy Murray, and I felt like it was a very good one because if you have a sort of a relatively high seed who is really not on form at the moment, put Andy Murray on centre court playing against Stefanos Tsitsipas, and I do think on grass he's got a really good shot at getting the win there. So I would rather he played a player he's played on grass last year, he beat him last year, who's kind of out of form in that sense, than a Dominic Thiem, because I do think that being the underdog in some of these situations can allow someone to play a bit more freely, and I'd rather that Murray was the underdog with the support of the British crowd. But for me, I don't know, I felt it was a good draw. Kim didn't think it was a great draw. Is this a good draw?
Do you know what? I think it's a good draw, particularly if you saw much of how Tsitsipas was playing in that first set against Dominic Thiem. I'm hoping Tsitsipas comes through because I don't think he's playing very near at all his best. I know there's been a lot of chat on Tsitsipas and Paula Badosa and whether that has taken energy of his away from the tennis court and his focus. Exactly. It's hard not to put 2 and 2 together at the moment, so I'm all for it if it's going to give Andy Murray his best chance. So we'll have to wait and see. But a couple of other Brits, Cam Norrie is through. He came through against Thomas Machak of the Czech Republic in 4 sets. But Dan Evans is out to Quinton Hallis. I just want to mention this, Chris, because I was watching this before we started recording. Quinton Hallis, how is he ranked where he is? Because he looks absolutely phenomenal against Evans. Big serve, competent from the baseline. I know Dan Evans, I think gets too down in the dumps on himself at times, and I think that's what happened to him yesterday, that proceeded to him to becoming 2 sets to love down. But Hallis played a great match throughout and didn't really let the British crowd bother him. Yeah,
I think the reason why he's sort of ranked where he is because I think there's that sort of he plays regularly on the Challenger Tour. He doesn't necessarily always get the breakthrough on the main tour, but Wimbledon and grass, it's one of those things where playing at Wimbledon does really inspire people to bring out their best tennis, and I think it was a prime example of that because it's not the case that he's necessarily an experienced grass courter at all. I think it is the moment and the history and the prestige of the tournament that really does kind of inspire people to play this well and seize the moment. And especially playing a Brit at Wimbledon, it's almost the sort of the perfect challenge to see you're either going to sink or swim, and he really, really rose to the occasion. So it will be interesting to see how he plays when the pressure is kind of on him more to come through against Alexander Vukic in the next round, who arguably most people haven't necessarily heard of or familiar with. So for me, this screams a sort of a standout individual performance, but I probably think he won't be having a deep run here.
Yeah, it gave me flashbacks to John Isner last year against Andy Murray, where you can just have an inspired match under a roof, big serve, anything can happen. And I'm not going to lie, Chris, he's another name I think we should be putting into the hat for the French male #1 ranking.
There's a lot of names.
There's a lot of
hat.
names. We could just throw them all in. Yeah, but he's definitely done that. I mean, moving on to all the women's action that we've had today, we had Ons Jabeur coming through against Magdalena Frech in straight sets, 6-3, 6-3. We also had Elena Rybakina come through a very tough test, I thought, in Shelby Rogers, 4-6, 6-1, 6-2. I actually want to start with this match because Rybakina, in the build-up, she was at Eastbourne. She had a viral illness. She wasn't 100%. And when I saw Shelby Rogers on paper, I was like, Shelby Rogers is a very handy Kaya Kanepi-esque player who a top seed would not want to face in the first round. So I thought this was a very impressive response after going down that first set. How did you see it?
Yeah, I think it wasn't actually, that bad a first set. I think it was just a slow start. One break, grass. If you're playing against someone who's serving well, Shelby served really well in that first set. One break can be all it takes, especially if you don't kind of get off to holding your serve. So I think once she settled, I think she did come through really nicely. And kind of where the match was won, it was very much a case that her first serve percentage increased dramatically. In the first set, she only landed 52% of her first serves, whereas in the second set and onwards, it was actually 75%. So for me, it was a case where she was able to control her end of the court and her serve and started to play much better when her serve was working, and it gave her a lot more confidence. So I actually was really impressed with how she played this match, and I think probably the way she responded will give her a lot of confidence that if she does get into a bit of a situation or a tricky match, she does know that she can come through it, because this is a tough match. Someone who's beaten her on grass last year. It does make you think she probably is over the illness now, and she is someone who we should definitely be putting in the mix when it comes to going deep here.
And I think she'll be wanting, because she's a big Roger Federer fan, and I think she said she was just a little bit nervous in that first set.
She blamed Roger Federer on being broken in the first game.
She said she was a little bit nervous, and maybe that came into it, which I was a little bit surprised by. But I think for me it was just great to see her, I think, being treated like a champion. I think over last year, since becoming a Grand Slam champion, we've seen her just kind of being hauled out onto really low budget courts, not on stadium courts,
and it's just not been Queens.
Yeah, exactly. It's just not been befitting of the tennis and the gravitas I feel like she brings to the game. So it's just really nice, I think, to see her and also avoid the upset, because that does not happen very often. And after that first set, I was a little bit wondering, like, could we be witnessing something that is a rarity at Wimbledon?
Yeah, and I think she'll be very pleased that this is Wimbledon with points. This is once again kind of a return to the normal, and no one can take away that Wimbledon crown that she has. But I think this is definitely game on for her, because she is very much right up there in the mix in terms of the top players on the tour. She's wanting to get that ranking up and kind of achieve the ranking that she would have got if she did have those 2,000 points. So I think she's going to do well here, and I think she's going to be even more focused than she was last year in terms of getting another great result here.
Well, another one of the favourites for Wimbledon, Aryna Sabalenka, she had no issues coming through Panna Udvardi, 6-3, 6-1. Pretty kind of routine match there. Bit of high power velocity from Sabalenka on her serve, big ground strokes, and it was a bit too much for Udvardi in the end. Chris, a lot of matches that got underway that weren't finished, that are being carried over tomorrow. Where was your eye drawn to? Because Berrettini and Sonego managed to get a set in, and Sonego took it on a tiebreak. I thought that was a lot closer than I thought Berrettini was gonna get. We have Ben Shelton as well. It's up a set and a break on Taro Daniel, Griekspoor and Fucsovics. I'm surprised. I thought Griekspoor would be doing a little bit better. He's a set and a break down to Fucsovics. I know he's a very handy competitor on his day, but Griekspoor's been in some great form. So
one of your predictions, Joel. One of your predictions.
I'm gonna say, but are there any of the matches so far you're kind of like interested to see develop tomorrow?
Well, I think you know that I was watching Madison Brengle, Sara Rani at the time of the rain delay. No, that's not true, listeners.
You were looking at the break point count specifically, right?
Yeah, I was looking at the service speed. No, so I was actually fascinated by the Holger-Rune match against Lofhagen in that one, because I think that was very close. I don't think many of us were thinking it would be that close. And I also had my eye on a very tricky round one for Katie Boulter, who maybe was also a little bit nervous playing in front of Kate Middleton out on an outside court, and Laura Robson. So I think those two were the ones I had my eye on. But I think that it was interesting to see just how close some of these sets were. There were so many tie breaks.
I just love the idea of the royal family, Kate Middleton. Yeah, you've got the royal box. You've got the royal box there for you. No, I'd rather go out into the masses on court 18
She's
to watch
all
Katie
of us,
Boulter
Joel.
in the rain. Yeah, she is all of us. I did really enjoy that moment. Yeah. We'll have to wait and see. But I think it's going to be interesting to see. Particularly these players, how they respond to the fact that they're
Hanging
probably
in the
going to have to
balance
play
some of these matches, right?
Yeah, and they're going to have to play a lot of tennis over the next few days. I'm not suggesting they're going to be knackered or anything, but I think the mental effort it could take to go in consecutive days of best of 5 set tennis could take its toll, perhaps, and give an advantage to players who finished today, like Andy Murray and Cam Norrie. So we'll have to wait and see. But we're going to take a quick break now. But join us in the second half, where we'll be taking a look back on all the action from day one from Wimbledon, as well as revealing our collector set predictions. So don't go anywhere.
This episode is brought to you by NordVPN.
NordVPN is a virtual private network, which means it protects your internet connection and privacy online.
VPNs create an encrypted tunnel for your data, protecting your online identity by hiding your IP address.
But what does this mean for our Tennis Weekly listeners? Well, we chose to partner with NordVPN because it will allow you to watch tennis wherever you are.
With NordVPN, you can connect to servers around the world, so when you're looking to watch live tennis and get that pesky message, this stream is not available in your market, all you have to do is open NordVPN, click on a location, and you'll be connected in seconds.
Personally, I've been using NordVPN for the last 2 years since I moved to Denmark, allowing me to still connect to my UK streaming services and watch all the tennis matches I need to in order to provide the best analysis I can every week on the podcast.
So if you're looking to watch every court at Wimbledon, but you can't in your market, or you're on your summer holiday and want to keep up on all the action from SW19, then NordVPN has you covered.
Download NordVPN today with our exclusive deal at nordvpn/tennisweekly, but make sure you use our link to secure the best deal and support the podcast. It really does help us keep doing what we love.
Plus, it's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. So what are you waiting for? Sign up before the players are ready and take to the court.
Welcome back to the Tennis Weekly podcast, sponsored by DownloadTennis.com. And now we're going to move on to day one, Chris. And there's only really a couple of places we can start, and they involve two American ladies, Coco Gauff and Venus Williams. We're going to start with Coco Gauff first of all. And Sofia Kenin winning in 3 sets, 6-4, 4-6, 6-2. I just want to say, it's just great to have this Sofia Kenin back. Can I say that? I know everyone is, I think, on the hype train for Coco Gauff, but it's just great, I think, to see Sofia Kenin play tennis like that, because she did not give an inch, I felt.
I think that it's fantastic to see, and I think it's great that she's obviously a completely different player to what we've seen at Wimbledon. I think we've had some very unfortunate matches. I mean, one of the worst performances by a tennis player, ever, was in her loss, which I think was under 45 minutes to Madison Brengle at Wimbledon. And so it's just great to see that someone is on the up and playing up and living up to their potential in that sense. And I do think, as great as that is, I do think it is such a shame for Coco Gauff, because I do think she had some good form coming on the grass, and this is a nightmare first round draw. Not only is it a former slam champion, but Kenin has been in unbelievable form on the grass in qualifiers.
Yeah, she walked through qualifying, didn't she?
Completely. I think she only dropped, 14 games in 3 matches. And she played against some like pretty handy players. Like Taylor Townsend is a very good player in the final round of qualifiers. So I think it is fantastic to see her playing great tennis, and something I've always said about her, she's one of the game's best problem solvers. And bouncing back to winning 3, I think it just shows that there is that resilience there is that mental strength, because when she upset Sabalenka, that was two sets. And I think a 3-set win against a player who is in the top 10 we really have to stick with it mentally. So she now is potentially taking over Coco Gauff seeding to maybe make it to a quarterfinal. So it'd be interesting to see how far you think she can go.
I feel like it's quite interesting. We'll talk about Coco Gauff in a sec, but I feel like there's a very big difference between, I'd say, the level of hype and excitement that Coco Gauff generates versus someone like a Sofia Kenin, where you'd say her achievements, she's won a Grand Slam singles title. Coco Gauff obviously hasn't done that yet, but there seems to be a big discrepancy between that, and it almost feels like, to me, Kenin is very unfairly overlooked in the women's game, and particularly I think in the American women's game as well. I was hearing some comments and the commentary actually from the US broadcasters on the Kenin Gauff match. It was all very pro Gauff. Why do you think Sofia Kenin just has this sort of? Why is she not accepted as much, do you feel, as someone like a Coco Gauff?
Well, I think it's a lot about the way that players come onto the tour. So, for example, Coco Gauff had that dream start. I think she was like 14, playing against Venus Williams, upsetting her, and make it through to the 4th round. That is the story that people love. People love that. A young player doing something incredible. Whereas Sofia Kenin, I think, up against Muguruza in that final, she was not necessarily the favourite for that. She was not necessarily kind of destined for that in terms of what the media had obviously talked about at that stage. So I think it's probably to do with the fact that it isn't necessarily as interesting a story as the Coco Gauff side of things, because of the fact that they were looking at those parallels with Venus Williams from that first match. There was a date with destiny was almost set, a prophecy. But to be honest, I think when it comes to Kenin, I don't think people are necessarily seeing it from a negative side of things. I think people are very pleased that she's doing very well. I think she's just been so absent from the top of the game, and her tennis has been so absent at times as well. So I think it's a case where there's not been much to cheer on and not much consistency. So I don't think we can read into too much that people have something against Sofia Kenin. I think people just really love Coco Gauff.
Yeah, I mean, Coco Gauff's issues, they are still there. The forehand is still a problem. I almost feel like she's going to have to go back to the drawing board, with that shot. It's such a core part of her game, but it still kind of leaks a lot of errors, and there's a lot of kind of doubt, I think, and uncertainty, and it was all to show, I think, in that 3rd set. Is it more than that? Is it just the forehand, or do you feel like there's more aspects of her game that are leading to this? Because, Wimbledon, she went out in the first round this year. She's almost kind of regressed in this tournament over time. She reached the 4th round in 2019, 4th round in 2021, 3rd round last year. What's going on there? Are there other aspects? Is it more than just the forehand at play?
I think if you look at the matches when she did do really well, she had a really good draw at Wimbledon those years. She also was completely pressure-free. I think it's very hard when you haven't necessarily lived up to what people might have thought of your expectations, whether they're your expectations or whether that's necessarily something that should be in your head. It can't not be. So I would say it is difficult to do that because there was so much attention on her. In terms of like the hype train side of things, I don't necessarily think that it is people who are kind of too much on the hype train. I think she is under the age of 20 and she's been so present at the top of the game since she first started. She's so experienced. So I think saying anything negative about what she's achieved, just because someone's trajectory isn't winning a slam immediately. If you look at the careers of, say, a Sofia Kenin, or, for example, maybe an Emma Raducanu, where they had a fantastic season and then they sort of dropped off the map a little bit, I think something that's so impressive is that even when Coco isn't doing well, she's still right up there in the top 10 of the live race. She's still having good seasons, and we've seen people who have had breakout seasons who haven't built on that. And I think sometimes it takes a bit longer for players, but she is 19, and I think we all need to bear in mind, this is not a round one exit. This is playing against a Grand Slam player who was pressure free in round one. It's an awful draw. So this is a pinch of salt for me.
Yeah, and I think she acknowledged that in the loss. She said to, she talked about Kenin and the fact that she had nothing to lose, and maybe that's one of the reasons Kenin can go out there, feel relaxed, and come out with the victory, because there's not that pressure on her that maybe is a little bit more on Coco Gauff. I'll be very interested to see now, given all this sort of excitement for Kenin, sort of this re-injection of energy.
I need her to win
exactly.
it, so my prediction, therefore, it was one of the two. I was stuck between one of those two to win it.
Well, I mean, moving on to another Grand Slam champion, Venus Williams. We were all very much looking forward to her first round match against Elina Svitolina. Svitolina came through that 6-4, 6-3. But Chris, I feel like the big talking point was that slip during the match. I think it was in the first set. There was a little kind of fall, little twist at the back of the court by Venus. Everyone was kind of wondering what was going on, particularly with Serena Williams in mind on the same court a few years ago. Did you feel like that match hung in the balance based on that moment?
It definitely affects how you feel from a confidence perspective on the surface. It really can. A fall really can knock your confidence, especially when you are someone like Venus, who has been so unlucky in terms of some of the injuries she's had recently. Like, she did start to get some good matches under her belt earlier in the year. I think when she was starting to kind of play back on the tour again, and she was doing well, and then obviously she got an injury. And obviously we saw what happened to Serena round one against Sasnovich. She had one fall very early on, and that was game
scary
over for her for almost a year, I think it was, that she didn't play again. So it is scary, and I think when it comes to your health as an athlete, I think it's very hard to forget that and move on. You've got to have faith in your footing, because you are moving as quickly as you can, and balance is so important. So I do think that probably does have an impact on things, but overall, I do think that Svitolina was just too good on the day, and I think Svitolina turned up for this match, because I actually thought that Venus had a chance in this prior to this, because in Birmingham, Svitolina lost 6-2, 6-love to Linda Fruhvirtova, and I thought maybe she hadn't got a grass game going, and that seemed like such an anomalous result, but clearly, for whatever reason, she's put that behind her, and that isn't how representative how she's playing. But again, with this match, two popular players, and whoever won this, people would be pleased for them. So looking forward to seeing Svitolina hopefully have another deep run at Wimbledon.
And another player who's probably hoping for a deep run, maybe a lot of people's favourite, Iga Świątek. She came through with a very easy win. Jessie Pegula and Victoria Azarenka, they sort of skirted maybe with defeat, but they came through with 3-set victories. I mean, moving on to the men, Chris. We had victories for Casper Ruud, came through in 4 sets. Yannick Sinner got it done against Juan Manuel Cerundolo as well in straight sets. I want to talk about Sinner, not necessarily because of the performance, but because of his bag, his accessories, because he came on with a Louis Vuitton bag,
a Gucci bag.
Louis Vuitton. I'm getting confused. You can tell I'm not a fashion expert. A Gucci bag. He had to get it approved from ITF, ATP, and Wimbledon, given their requirements around dress code and all that. What did you make of this bag?
So I have some quite strong opinions on this, because firstly, when you make such a big statement like this, Yannick Sinner has not won 7 Wimbledon titles. He has not won a Grand Slam, and it feels like this is the sort of energy that you can have when you are sort of entitled to that level of status, because this is an exception. This is a very abnormal thing to happen, and I think this is obviously a reflection of the softening of Wimbledon rules when it comes to dress code, and it comes to the white dress code, the undershorts, and I think that was long overdue. I think that's fantastic, and it's just such a shame that the thing that people are talking about is the fact that a man walks on with a Gucci bag that isn't white, when really the thing that we should be celebrating is the fact that, or not necessarily celebrating, the thing that's long overdue is the fact that women should be able to wear undershorts that are not white, because of the fact that they might be menstruating. So it just feels like this is a bit icky, and this shouldn't be the focus of what's going on. And the first time they relax it, it's like, wow, Yannick Sinner had a Gucci bag. And I just think it's all a bit silly, to be honest, and all a bit irrelevant.
Okay. Well, I will say I love the bag. I think it's a nice touch. I do wonder if it is a bit much, and whether I don't know where the thinking was around there, but I do like the sort of mix between kind of high end fashion and tennis. But I was a little bit surprised that it wasn't white, and I'm actually more surprised Wimbledon signed it off and allowed it. I don't know if they were like, well, if we were going to do this for the women, then maybe we're going to do something for the men. But I was a little bit surprised that such an accessory, such a big obvious accessory as well, was allowed. But we'll see if it makes an appearance in the future. It certainly was a good luck charm, I think, for Sinner. He also, Chris, had the Carota boys there. Now, I'm not going to lie, I didn't think those outfits would again fly with Wimbledon. I don't know if they have to get like sign off or anything, but we have the Carota boys from the French Open. They are here. They've been in the crowd. They have been spotted. It's nice to see them. But I was just a little bit surprised that they were allowed in. Yeah,
I mean, I feel like the brands have the power here. I think they've got some good sponsorship, some good PR team, because that is impressive.
Is it for the content? Is it for the Wimbledon social media?
I think it might be, but Kim spotted them as well. She spotted them, I believe. So they're all about. So maybe I might get myself a carrot costume and see if I can sneak into centre court if I don't manage to get a ticket in the queue, Joel.
Well, I mean, we also had victories for Musetti and Hubert Hurkacz. I mean, the biggest result probably was maybe Felix Auger-Aliassime, the 11th seed, who you've interviewed recently. He lost in 4 sets to Michael Mmoh. He was a very tricky customer, I think, and we weren't really that sure, I think, about Auger-Aliassime, seeing him play at the Boodles. Were you surprised to see him go out, or do you think that was a kind of a fair enough result?
No, I was really surprised. I think the only thing that made me think that maybe this could have been an upset was that against sort of Diego Schwartzman, he wasn't really letting rip like he was kind of the end of last season. It was quite tentative, and he talked about being competitive when we spoke with him, and it just felt like he was sort of missing that competitive edge at times, where he's making kind of his presence
known. He's lost
known.
the belief a little bit, I feel. I
do think so. I think he has a little bit there, and because when you think about his game, there's no reason why he shouldn't be doing fantastically at Wimbledon again. And it is a bit of a shame, because he really was the number one form player at that period at the end of last year on the indoor hard courts. He was playing some of the best tennis we've ever seen, and I think we thought that was him pushing on. And unfortunately, that kind of hasn't happened here. So that is a shame for him. It's a shame, but he didn't have the perfect preparation. He did say that to us. Yeah,
no, he didn't. I mean, another player who did come through, Novak Djokovic, came through in straight sets. A lot of people were talking about his antics during the rain break, getting out a towel to wash the court as opposed to his tennis. Just a kind of a very much a straightforward victory there. Another straight sets victory I was a little bit surprised by. Stan Wawrinka against Emil Ruusuvuori. I'm not going to lie, I was surprised with Wawrinka coming through in this in straight sets, because Ruusuvuori's been he's been on form, I feel, this season, and I thought I feel like that to me is a little bit of an upset.
Yeah, I think it is also kind of a testament to, previous generations versus kind of this next generation, is that they are still able to get it done and have that champions mentality. Exactly. They really are. Murray's showing he can do it. Wawrinka shows it. Obviously, Djokovic is showing everyone that he's at his peak almost physicality at 30, 36 years old and above. So that is a surprise. But again, it's about those big moments, and it's about landing serves, making good decisions, and getting the most out of your game. And that's where experience really does pay off, especially in a slam.
Well, we've got a lot of tennis to look forward to tomorrow, given the rain over the last few days. We've got centre court, Kasatkina, Burridge, Swiatek, Sorribes, Tormo, Jordan Thompson, Novak Djokovic. And then on number 1 court, we've got Medvedev, Krejcikova against Watson, Sinner, Schwartzman. Chris, where are you? I know there's so much tennis going on tomorrow. Where are you looking in terms of matches to watch?
Well, we both love a bit of Krejcikova, Joel, and we always love to see Heather Watson play. So for me, I think that will be a very good one. I'm fascinated to see what might happen in the finale of the Fritz Hanfmann match. I think that would be
I didn't realise Taylor Fritz was on the verge of losing.
Yes, exactly. And that will be very interesting to see. And then I also think that it will be good to see how Sinner and Schwartzman match up, because I don't think Schwartzman will be as easy a result as some people might think, because I was really impressed with his grass court play, and I think it was Felix said that, like, because he is not the tallest gentleman on the tour, that actually allows him to really get on the ball when he's playing. So I think that could be more interesting than you might think.
And there's a little bit of spice there already, because Schwartzman has already said to Sinner, I've seen on social media, he wants that bag. So I think he was like to Sinner, can you bring out a spare bag for me? Because I want the Gucci.
He's got
Gucci
more than
bag.
one. We know he's got more than one.
He's surely got more than one. Exactly. He could probably fit inside the bag, to be fair, how big it is.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, I'm also going to be looking at Annette Kontaveit, of course. She's opening up on court sits. I really hope she can come through that. She should not be going out at 11 a.m. on an outside court of Wimbledon. That just feels a bit sad if that happens. But yeah, I'm hoping all the best for Kontaveit. It does leave us, Chris, with the final act of this episode, and that is revealing our collector set predictions. We've also got Kim's predictions as well. A reminder to our listeners, and thank you everyone who has entered, a reminder of our players. They are Tiafoe, Murray, Ruud, Swiatek, Kvitova and Donna Vekic. So can you reveal to me where you think these players are going to be ending up at Wimbledon?
Well, I have gone for round 4 for Tiafoe, Murray and Casper.
Ooh, a hat trick. Okay.
I just thought across the board, I see them having good Wimbledons, not amazing Wimbledons. And then for the ladies, I have Iga in the quarterfinals. I'm sticking with Kvitova prediction for the final, just so I have some chance of making my women's singles predictions look acceptable. And then I've gone for Vekic for the semi-final. So I have stuck with my guns on those sort of predictions. What about you, Joel?
I've gone similar on the men. I've got Murray and Tiafoe in round 4. I think they're going to reach the second week. However, I've got Casper Ruud going out in round 2. I'm not that confident about that, to be honest, given how he was playing in round 1. And then I've got Iga Swiatek as my champion, Kvitova and Vekic reaching the quarterfinals. So a little bit different there. I've noted I'm the only one of the three of us who's predicted a champion, and that is Swiatek. So, yeah. And Kim, just adding, Kim has gone quarterfinals for Tiafoe, round 2 for Murray, round 4 for Ruud, runner-up for Swiatek, and then round 4 Kvitova, round 3 Vekic. I feel like there's a little bit more negative there, I feel.
Very reserved, Joel. I feel like maybe she's playing to protect herself there. A bit of a defensive collector set from Kim this time. But
it feels
we've
that
had
way.
a lot of entries, so we have stiff competition from our listeners, Joel. Even more entries than the French Open, so everyone wants to get their hands on that mug.
I just don't want to get my hands on the slam spoon of shame, which I think is that with you at the moment? It definitely needs to be after that terrible Coco Gauff win prediction.
I thought I'd get rid of it after from the French Open to Wimbledon, but I think I've sealed my fate already. So
well, I think your fate has been sealed, but who knows? We'll have to wait and see how Collector Set progresses. Of course, we're going to keep all of our listeners up to date on who is going to win a coveted Tennis Weekly mug. So watch out for that. But I think we're gonna wrap it up there. We're gonna wrap it up there for our round 1 Wimbledon catch up. So listeners, I hope you've enjoyed our latest episode of the Tennis Weekly podcast. Remember to subscribe to us to stay up to date on all the action to come over the next fortnight. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all major podcasting platforms out there. And if you like what you're hearing, then make sure to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
You can also follow us on social media or email the show. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube and TikTok at Tennis Weekly Pod. And that's where you can see all of the action from Wimbledon, from Kim in the queue, what Kim gets up to in rain delays, my first attempt at queuing, and then Joel not in the queue.
Yes, I'll just post photos of me just watching at home in the comforts of my own living room. Exactly.
You can also email the show, tennisweeklypod@gmail.com, or check out the website, tennisweekly.co.uk. And do subscribe to NordVPN using the link in our bio. It really does help us to keep doing what we love. And that's in the bio, just underneath this video, wherever you are listening.
And we will be back on Thursday at Tennis Weekly HQ for our round 2 Wimbledon catch-up. So I hope you can join us for that. But in the meantime, it's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. We'll see you again soon.